Hi and welcome to video number 3 on how wizards work. Please check out the first two videos in case you want to see it from the beginning. We are still in customer to 10. We are still in a wizard which creates a new idea. We are still in this stride, in this page capture the idea. And we have in the last video worked on the first components of this stride. So pick that stride, select a stride, see the navigation, see the conditions, see the actions, and let's go back to the components for one more time. We have discussed info box types, which are quite important to make the pages look pretty. For example, this picture here is an info box, and then there is a set of attributes, all the attributes of an item page which you can select from: text, booleans, drop downs, budgets, whatever it is. This is always the type fill item attribute from ItemID 1, which I now explain why that happens. And with a pen you define what exactly the item is you want to see there, the attribute, from which portfolio, and what is the attribute exactly, and whether it should be read only or not. So let's talk about this item ID. A wizard is able to combine various items in one wizard. Meaning, for example, you have a project and the project is linked with an Arbeitspaket or a work breakdown structure and or with a to-do. Then you can combine 2 or 3 items in one wizard. You can make it really complex. But for the wizard to know where to store the information, it has to know what item ID it shall use. And this is the importance in store 1 and 2, item ID 1, 2, or maybe even 3, third item ID. Most wizards come only with one item ID. So where is that coming from, this item ID? If we go back to the start of this wizard, it is all about creating a new idea. So the first wizard stride, so the first page, if you activate the first stride, you would see that if you activate that stride, you have the navigation, you have the condition, and you have a component. First, go to the component. First, we have an info box with the order of 5, which says welcome to the idea management and so on. And then you see that there's a create statement, create item. So this wizard starts with creating a new idea, create a new item. And with a pen you see what portfolio is defined in project, and if there's a certain subportfolio which is not defined, but you can define what the user could see, where he can enter a new item. So the importance of this create item or a select item statement, create item or select item, is that you tell the wizard, go for this item in this portfolio and use the item ID 1 item ID to store the information you get. And with creating a new item ID is created. As you know, whenever a new item is created, here in the URL, in the effective, there's a new ID, and this is the item ID we're talking about. So let's go back to this stride and work it from top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom, that's way around, to understand how that works exactly. So you have the first stride where you say select a new idea. So let's go and create a new idea. Create new idea. So you see the picture, which you could see in the stride. You go to one of the subportfolios, you ignore this linking, and you say test idea. Idea on the 2nd of June. So when you now press save, you create a new idea, ID with this number. And this is what is going to be saved in that stride. So it says create new idea and store this item ID before going forward. and the system, and now we are going to conditions. So the condition for moving forward from one stride to the other, please check out the other video on how strides are linked to each other. It says a navigation is only possible if this condition is true. So in that case, it only the wizard would only let you go to the next page if an item ID is existing. So this is a quite important navigation condition you normally set in the beginning of a wizard. Either when you select or when you create an item, you normally say that the system should store the item ID. So you go here, you say tag provided, and you want to store item ID, and you put this on true. And then with a plus, you activate that condition, which is already done here. So it is important for the wizard to store the item ID. So all the other strides, all the other pages, if you now go to the next page, capture the idea. There will be components as well, either info boxes or attributes to be filled out. For example, the description of this idea, which is this Beschreibung. And the system needs to know where to put that information. So you need to say always, if you're using fill item attribute, that item ID 1 has to be used, or if you have a second item ID, item ID shall be used. If you don't do this, an error message will occur. So if you leave this empty, then an error message will occur because the system would not know where to store the information. So you always need to say that. And in all the other strides, you always have to refer back to this item ID. So it is quite important in the beginning of a wizard, which normally starts with either a select item or with a create item statement, create or select, that you say store item ID, and normally you use a condition in saying the wizard shall not go forward without this item ID to be stored. Okay, quite complex, quite difficult to understand, but this is a key for using wizards. This item ID is key, so always think about what kind of items will I use in my wizard, and think about, is that item ID 1 or 2 or 3, and work accordingly with these conditions and the components, that you always capture it at the right point in time so that the system will not create error messages. Okay, see the next video on navigation conditions and actions. Thanks.